We're talking about value. I don't know how many understand the value of a diamond. If you've shopped for a diamond and what makes the value of a diamond. And there's a formula that they use. It's called the 4 C's. Right? There's the clarity of the diamond. Which that's if there's blemishes or whatever. There's the color of the diamond, and actually the less color, the more valuable the diamond. But they go by clarity, color. They go by the cut. This is where the workmanship, the person who cuts the diamond, can increase the value of that diamond stone and the way that's cut, and that it brings out maybe more of the color, more of the clarity. And then there's the carat. That's the weight. And again, the weight doesn't necessarily make it valuable, because it's the other C's that can contribute to that. You could have a large diamond that isn't as valuable as a smaller diamond because of the. But again, the 4 C's contribute to the value of that particular diamond. And we need to understand that as we talk about the family here, I want us to understand what makes the family valuable. God's design. Again, you can get, even like the diamond. There's the workmanship, that cuts that diamond. I mean, a raw diamond doesn't really have any value until it's shaped in a way that it can be put into that jewelry setting. And the family likewise. The workmanship is God. He's the designer. He places the value on the family, and he's working in each life, and he's working in each family to show you the value that you are. And so I just want to share, just real quickly here, a couple points of value in the family. I want you to understand that, first of all, number one, the value of family is raised, all right? Again, the value is raised, all right? The value of a family is raised when a husband and wife comfort each other. I think that's where it kind of starts, where a husband and wife are comforting each other. Now, I'm not going to read these scriptures that are there. They're in your notes. I encourage you to maybe spend some time with those scriptures this week individually, as a couple, with your family. But I'm don't have the time really to read these scriptures, but I want you to understand, first of all, when I say when a husband and wife comfort each other, the value of the family is raised, it increases. We need to look at it this way. If you are not comforting with each other, you are conflicting with each other. And see, that's the contrast that's there. There needs to be the comforting. If there's not comforting, there's conflict. The chapters in Genesis 24 through 27, highlight a couple from the Old Testament, Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac was the son of Abraham and Sarah. And again, I can't take time to go through all this, but Abraham was concerned. Sarah had passed away, and Abraham was concerned for what wife his son Isaac would have. And he sought the Lord that God's choice, God's design for Isaac. And so the Lord brought Rebekah to Isaac. And it says at the end of chapter 27 that it says Isaac brought her into the tent, and he married Rebekah, so she became his wife, and he loved her. And it says Isaac was comforted after his mother's death by her. And it's that idea that marriage is to be a place of comfort. Husbands and wives are to comfort each other. Now, the other interesting thing about Isaac and Rebekah is that as they had children, they had twins, all right, Jacob and Esau. Well, years later, we'll read that they were in conflict, really, and that Isaac and Isaac and Rebekah, as they grew older, they had their favorite son. And again, I don't want to go through the details of the story, don't have the time, but they were in conflict with each other, and it caused really the separation of the family to the point that Jacob had to flee his brother Esau. And again, Rebekah and Isaac, weren't comforting each other. They were in conflict, and it caused the family to be disunited. It's that idea that it starts that with marriage, and the idea for a husband and wife to comfort each other and to provide comfort for that family. Of course, Ephesians chapter 5 is that passage of Scripture that, quite frankly, in today's modern society, people like to maybe eliminate it, because that whole part of Ephesians 5 that highlights two words, basically, submission and sacrifice, where it says, wives, submit to your husbands. And husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's sacrifice. I try to tell people, because people really stumble over those words, especially submission. And that's why there's so many problems within our American society and in the home and the families, because we eliminate submission and sacrifice, and really they're terms, they're synonymous terms. They mean the same thing, really. To submit is to sacrifice. To give of your life is to submit. And so, God is expecting the same thing of wives and husbands. And what happens is it creates value then. That when we submit, when we sacrifice for one another, we are creating value. We're making value. You're saying to each other as a husband and wife how valuable they are. And so we need to understand that the value of the family is raised when a husband and wife comfort each other. Secondly, the value of a family is raised when children learn new ways to honor their parents. Now, when you use the word children, immediately most everybody eliminates themselves. They say, well, I'm not a child anymore. A child is somebody who's in elementary school, a child maybe, somebody who's a teenager. Well, we're all still children, all right? And we need to understand the value of a family is raised when children of all ages learn new ways to honor their parents. To honor their parents. Of course, Deuteronomy 5:16, we have the Lord giving the law to Moses, and he says, honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long and that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Now, Ephesians 6:3, Paul's just repeating that. He's just quoting that. But here's your incentive for all of us. I don't care where you're at. I don't care what decade of your life if you're in your teens, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, and even if your parent or parents has already passed away, we're still children. I am still a son of Merle Grossglass. And we need to continue to live our life learning new ways to honor our parents, to honor them. And so the incentive, God gives us the incentive that it may go well with you. I mean, that's your incentive. Why people ask, well, why do I have to honor my, somebody struggles with this because they have maybe an abusive parent, or they have an ornery individual as a parent, and they, how can I honor them? Why should I honor them? Well, it'll go better for you. It will go well with you. My paraphrase of that is, what goes around comes around. All right? When you make it go well for your parents, it will go well for you. And again, it doesn't matter what your age is. All right? Now, I'm actually looking forward as I become a grandparent here, because I'm ready to sit back and just watch. Because I remember some of those challenging times. and as Nicole has Max, I mean, and as Amanda and Brandon have baby boy, Justice, and whatever else comes our way in the years to come, I'm ready to watch, because what goes around comes around. And so, but that's why it's still, I mean, as I live my life, I want to honor my mom. I want to honor my dad, because it will go well with me. And so in a way, it's kind of that command has a little bit of a selfish twinge to it, that, hey, honor your parents, because it will go well with you. It will go well with you. When I say learn new ways, it means, it's not about, okay, I got to do better Father's Day, or I got to do better on Mother's Day, or I got to remember an anniversary or a birthday. No, when I say learn new ways, it means to seek greater and better ways to keep them in that place of prominence and authority in your life. It means daily to find ways to honor them. Yeah, it could be as simple as a phone call for no other reason, just to say hi. How many times is that when we really call, it's because we need something, right? Or we want something. And so it's learning new ways, just realizing this is God's purpose, God's design, and it brings value to the family when children continue to learn new ways to honor their parents. And remember this, every parent's greatest satisfaction, I think, this is my opinion, their two greatest satisfactions is to watch their children succeed. I like to use the term, to live vicariously through them. To see their success and to be there and to live through them. But it's also to continue to fill a need for their child, no matter how many years old they may be. To have that satisfaction that you're still needed and that you can still serve a purpose, which again, God's design is to do that we always are fulfilling a purpose. So again, value of a family is raised when a husband and wife comfort each other. Value of a family is raised when children learn new ways to honor their parents. And there's far many other things here. But lastly, the value of family is raised when family is your great motivation. It's your greatest motivation. It's your daily motivation. I mean, to doing the journey of life and faith together. As I said, I would never walk the Appalachian Trail by myself. All right? I mean, Stephanie and I started doing it last year. Our hopes in the years to come is other ones are going to join it, as they can, and Sherry, that we do this together. We make these trips, together. But I would never do it by myself. I understand there's, the will and to accomplishment there, but the great motivation is to, do it with those I love and those I care for, and not just to hike an Appalachian Trail, but to live this life, together, to live it for and with each other. We understand that incentive, that motivation for living every day, every moment, that we live for the ones we love. We live for our family. We live for our spouse. We live for our children, our grandchildren. As a child, I often remember the exhortation that would be given as Christian leaders, teachers, many times would say, live your life, as though Jesus is with you everywhere you go. Live each day as though Jesus is with you everywhere you go. And that is true. Christ is with us. He goes with us. But I understand some people say, well, that's kind of hard to, well, if you struggle with that, then live with this motivation. that every day, every moment, your family is with you. Every decision, every action, everything you say or do will have an impact on your loved ones, on your spouse, on your children. And I've used that as a motivation throughout my life. I would never want to embarrass my family in any way. I know there's times I have. There's time, but to use that motivation to say, I'm not going to disappoint them. I'm going to, to me that's the greatest motivation that you can have. Whether you even have a faith in the Lord or not, to just know that there are people that depend on you. People that, when I read stories or in the news of individuals who have succumbed to temptation, who have been caught in criminal activities or anything, that I immediately think about their family. How are they feeling? And their children, just something that has been a mindset of mine. But to know that when family is your greatest motivation, your family's value increases, it raises. And I want you to see how valuable family is to God. These verses here, these three verses, Proverbs 11:29 says, "He who brings trouble on his family will inherit only wind." Now that's how valuable family is to God. That this proverb tells us that if you're bringing trouble to your family, you're gonna be left empty-handed. You'll be left. That's tremendous incentive to not bring trouble upon your family. Proverbs 17:6, "Children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children." To live with that motivation to make your loved ones proud. That would keep you out of a lot of trouble. But how about this? Here's the worst comparison. God's word relative to our responsibility to our family gives the worst comparison. I don't know if you know about this in 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." That's a powerful, powerful word there, folks. Let me say it again. If anyone does not provide for his relatives and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Now, to me, that's the worst comparison that could be out there, that you're worse than an unbeliever. Even to try to comprehend that, what it's saying is that if your family is not first, if your family is not your primary motivation to live for and to provide for, that you're worse than an unbeliever. That's, to me, that's powerful motivation right there. Powerful motivation right there. Well, as I close this off here, this discussion, or whatever you want to call it, and again, like I said, maybe spend some time on your own with these verses and just kind of these are kind of my points here that I've put together. But one of Jesus' probably most familiar parables is the parable of the lost son. It's in Luke chapter 15, and it's a unique chapter in that entire chapter really talks about the value of something, and really the value of each individual. There's three stories, three parables in Luke chapter 15. There's the parable of the lost coin. There's the parable of the lost sheep, and there's the parable of the lost son. And they kind of increase in intensity or increase in importance. All right, from a thing, an object, to a creature, to an individual. And in this parable, Jesus tells this parable of the lost son. And personally, my personal opinion is that to say it's a parable of the lost son, is a misnomer. Because there's times I refer to it as the parable of two lost sons. Because Jesus told the parable of the son who decided he wanted to leave, he wanted his part of the inheritance early, and he just wanted to leave and do his own thing. And the majority of the parable focuses on that. But, and it speaks of the father's love, and as the son comes to his senses and returns repentant. If the lesson of the parable was just that, the one son was returned, Jesus would end it there. But he continued it to say that the father, celebrating the return of his lost son, suddenly Jesus highlights the other son. And there's a purpose to that, because the attitude of that son really put him in a place of lostness as well. And that really, where you see the first son was separated by miles and had left and had been lost, and nobody knew where he was at. And in return, the other son who remained there was just as lost because of his attitude towards the family and even towards his father's excitement and celebration when the first son returned. Well, just like two more points of value that we see here from this parable is this: love or the family never gives up. Never gives up. In fact, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us love always perseveres, love never fails, love never gives up. And we need to understand family never gives up. And that places value on the family, places value on each individual. But secondly, the other point of value is that love or the family never compares. I think that's the second lesson that's in that parable of the two lost sons, is that, again, the lost son that went away and came back, his value was still there because the father never gave up. But the second son was just as lost because he didn't want to celebrate his brother. In fact, he doesn't even refer to him as his brother. He says, that son of yours. And see, that tells me how lost even this other son was. That even though he was in close proximity, even though he remained there and fulfilled the responsibilities and worked hard but he was still lost. He was just as separated from the family as the first son, because he was making a comparison. And so I close with these 2 points that what I say diminish a family's value. And again, these are my own words, but the distant family member, that family member who is maybe wayward, has separated him or herself from the family, and it breaks the family up. It breaks the heart of the parent. It breaks the heart of the children. Maybe it's a parent that's distant, a parent that has left. It doesn't have to be just a child. But what they take away is their own value when they separate themselves from their family. But again, family never gives up. Family never gives up. The other one that diminishes the family's value is what I call the dissent family member. The dissent, D-I-S-S-E-N-T. What that means is to dissent is to be in disagreement. And this highlights the other brother, the other son. He was in disagreement. He didn't want to celebrate the return of his brother. He took away from the value of the family. And again, we need to understand that with whoever that family member may be, and if that, as I'm sharing this with you, I'm sure maybe in your mind you're thinking of maybe a family member that describes. But we don't give up. We don't give up, because the value of each individual, the value of the family is from God. He's the design. You know, the diamond is, again, a strong gem, but it's not indestructible. And a diamond can be crushed, it can be scratched, it can be broken. There's a story of a king who owned an enormous and very beautiful diamond. And every day the king took the diamond from its jewel-encrusted box and looked with awe at the gem that transformed the sunlight into magnificent, shimmering kaleidoscopes of color, and it always made him very happy. And one day the king accidentally dropped the diamond, and it grazed the side of its box and then fell heavily to the floor of the throne room. And when he picked it up, the king found a long, jagged scratch down one side of the diamond. Horrified, he immediately called upon his royal jewelers to repair the gem, but they were unable to do so. The king then called upon other jewelers from other lands near and far, but none were able to repair the diamond as the king wanted. Finally, a meager pauper appeared at the palace and said that he could repair the king's diamond. The king and his advisors were wary at first, but then realizing they had nothing to lose, they invited the pauper to proceed. And the pauper retreated into a cell, and after working for an entire week, he emerged and handed the king his diamond box. Sitting upon his throne, the king opened the box, smiled with delight, and held up the jewel for all to see. The pauper had not removed the jagged line at all. Instead, he had etched an image of a rose onto one end of it, leaving the scratch as the stem of the beautiful flower. This illustrates the fact that what God can do. We are his diamonds. And we have flaws. We have scratches. We have things that are wrong, things that we've done wrong. But when we put ourselves in God's hand, when we draw nearer to him, he takes us and he fixes those scratches, those hurts, those pains. Maybe they're not healed completely, but he uses them in a way that will strengthen us and increase our value. Nothing we can ever do can separate us from God's love and puts us beyond his healing, his repairing. And that goes for our families as well.